Hi, I'm Haley, and my artwork for this piece was called New York to San Francisco in an Hour, and it was by Alexander Malendondo. And so this is a piece. There's normally color with it, but my printer doesn't have color. And you can see there's geometric shapes, and it's very futuristic. So in introducing this lesson, I would start with my students for talking about how technology and transportation has evolved over time. So the students will be introduced to this piece of work with history. And the background of the story for the art piece is what really has to do with my lesson. So the background of the art piece is about Alexander's travel with his family to America to live the American dream. And I think this art piece perfectly represents the American dream because it talks about how America evolves and how you can get from one place to another in an hour compared to like other third world countries where it would take days by walking. So the social studies standard would be the students will describe the 4 types of productive resources: natural, human capital, entrepreneurship. So they will understand transportation, goods, and how they evolved over time. And then they will create a cartoon strip which will show it will be kind of a timeline to show each state and how one, at the beginning it was by horseback and how in the future it's going by technology where you can shoot across the country in a train in an hour. And so the assessments would be at the graphic organizer, where I would ask the students a couple questions and they would just fill in the blanks to see how, if I am questioning them right, and see if they're getting the gist, the idea of the history part. And then the art assessment would be then creating their own evolution over time with the social studies that we learned of technology in the early 1800s compared to now, compared to what they think it'll be like in another 100 years. And then for the next part, the students will answer 3 questions related to art. And so there'll be aesthetic questions. What catches your eye when you look at the picture? What emotions do you feel towards it? And can you make a personal connection? So these link in language arts, and the language arts standards would be use information gained from the illustrations, maps, photographs, and the words in the text to demonstrate the understanding to text. So my goal for this would be have the students make their own aesthetic questions. So instead of them just being oh, what color is this car? Or what is this shape? You have to make them really think about it. And so then they're going to create their own create their own questions with their classmates. So at the beginning, I want them to talk about with their classmates what they see in Alexander's piece. And then by the end, they're creating their own. And that's when my assessment comes in. So I'm assessing them on their artwork that they created for futuristic, what they think the future travel will be like. And then if they can create their own aesthetics, if they understand that. And then they'll quiz their students. And so all of that will be 2 types of assessments. And I also want to throw in how, if there's time with another assessment, I'll do assessment of aesthetic questions versus non-aesthetic. So one would be, what do you see in the picture at this point, and how does it make you feel? Or what color is this car? And they kind of have to pick back and forth. The next thing will be introduction to students for describing, analyzing, interpreting, and judging. And this is linked into math. And so the math standard is understand the shapes in different categories. They share many attributes, and they share attributes that can be defined in a larger category. Recognize rhombuses, rectangles, and squares and examples of quadrilaterals, and draw examples of quadrilaterals that do not belong in the category. So they're going to categorize different shapes that they see in the picture, and as I showed you before, lots of shapes going on. And the students will be able to critique their artwork from the 4 main categories. And so the students will be introduced to different shapes and relate to what is similar and different in the 4 attributes. And there are many variations of 4-sided angles or parts. The students will really look in depth and truly categorize the certain shapes, just like we would critique art. So the first thing will be the students will list 4 major sided shapes listed in the artwork and put them in a category. So this is going to be the math assessment. So when they look here, they're going to see rectangles, squares, quadrilaterals, and so they have to put them in 4 different categories of the 4 types, rhombuses, and then say how many squares they saw, how many rectangles they saw, and whatnot. And so they're going to tally it up and compare answers with me and then their classmates. And then the students will create 4 personal statements or questions relating to the topics for art critiquing. So at this point, like, the students will be well aware of critiquing art. And so then they will create, just like they had the 4 categories of the rhombuses, the quadrilaterals, of this or that, they'll have 4 questions related to how like critiquing the art or statements of the art. And then they'll compare and contrast with their partners. And then for science, the students will be familiar with the character of scientific knowledge and how it is achieved. And so for visual arts, the selects and uses major subjects of matter, symbols, ideas, and communicating in meeting. So the students for science are going to understand technology and how it's evolved over time. And then they're going to create an art project where they describe the materials and steps for the art project. So they'll create an art project that links into the previous image above and then create their own. So I really want them to understand the idea of scientific knowledge. And in science, nothing is proven. It's just evidence to help create theories or laws. So with that in mind and predictions, I want the students to understand that, like, science now is going to be completely different of how it is in another 100 years. So I want them to be able to take that and create their own picture of how they think they can get to from America where they would be to any other country in the world, and how the technology would work for that. And that links in with science and creating their own image related to Alexander's image. And so those would be the assessments of a timeline, or no, that would just be the assessments of watching, of comparing what they've learned earlier with scientific knowledge, and listing how science compares to how it was, how it is now, and where it will be. And then kind of like the social studies. And then the art assessment would be creating their own image and linking that in to Alexander's thing.